morning. Happy Sunday. Thank you all for being here today at our next chapter Writers Festival, brought to you by the LA County Library. My name is Eddie Gamara. Yes, correctly spelled. Awesome. And I'll be moderating the panel for this morning. As customary for all of the programs that the LA County Library does, I will begin by sharing the LA County Land Acknowledgement. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Kiz, and Chumash people. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonialism resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands, and we are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including, in no particular order, the Fernandinho Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, the Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians Kiz Nation, the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, the San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. And now I'd like to introduce our fabulous panelists. As for myself, my name is Eddie Gamara. I run a company called Gamara Media. I consult at the intersections of publishing and entertainment. I was a literary manager for 15 years. I was a studio executive for 5 years. I've been an executive producer of 5 movies, 4 of which were based off of books. And I now have my own company where I help authors and screenwriters and illustrators and animators figure out their creative strategy and their business strategy. Enough about me. Today, we're being joined by Melanie Figueroa, Jordan Hamsley, and Erin Pascal. Melanie Figueroa, to my immediate left, is a literary agent at Root Literary with over a dozen years, well, decade of experience in the book publishing industry. She earned an MS in creative writing and book publishing from Portland State University and a BA in English rhetoric and composition with a professional certification in technical writing from California State University, Long Beach. Her career in publishing started as an editorial project manager and freelance editor. She joined Root Literary in 2018 as an agency coordinator and quickly transitioned into her current role as literary agent. Her portfolio of representation spans across children's literature and adult fiction. Jordan Hamsley joined Jabberwocky as an agent in 2023 with over 15 years of publishing experience, both as an agent and an editor, where she worked at Penguin Young Readers, at the Grosset and Dunlap imprint, Egmont US, and Adaptive Studios. After graduating from the New School with a BFA in musical theater, jazz hands, and spending time performing across the country, Jordan made the leap to publishing and loves continuing to help news stories get into the world across various media. She represents a list of diverse children's fiction from picture books through YA, young adult, and select adult genre and pop culture writers. She also represents a growing list of graphic novelists and illustrators. She is always looking to find stories that bring the queer experience to the children's space across all age ranges. And last in our dais here is Erin Pascal. Erin is a senior children's book editor at Andrews McMeel with over 12 years experience. She's edited literally hundreds of picture books, chapter books, guidebooks, storybooks, novelty books, cookbooks, activity books, graphic novels, and much, much more. Who knew there were so many formats of books? The company she's worked for include Simon & Schuster, Disney, Scholastic, and of course, Andrews McMeel. She's also worked with licensors like Disney, Lucasfilm, Warner Brothers, DC Comics, Marvel, Neopets, Nickelodeon, Hasbro, and NBC Universal. Thank you so much for being here. today to my wonderful panelists. So we are going to be recording this. We had a wait list of over 400 people. And it's clear to us that there's not just a desire, but a need for the kinds of information that we're going to be sharing with you today. So if your friends couldn't make it to the actual session today, the organization will make this link hopefully available to everyone. Before I get into my questions, I want to let you know that we're going to have time for you to all ask questions as best as we possibly can. We started a little bit late, but we're going to try and get Q&A in there. Please write your questions on the provided cards and pass them towards the center aisle. Did everyone get, is there any cards? No cards? Ah, Jose, you're going to be passing around cards. Fabulous. And hopefully some kind of writing implement as well. But if people need pens, we'll work that out. The staff will be collecting those questions and we'll bring them up at the end. But let's just go ahead and get started. How many of you are authors who have not yet been published? How many of you are authors who have been published? How many of you are illustrators who've not yet been published? And how many of you are illustrators who have been published? Great. Okay, so we have a really nice mix of folks. We're going to start with some very basic stuff. So for those of you who have already been published, maybe it might sound a little bit rudimentary, but we want to make sure the entire community who's gathered today gets a lot of the grounding information that we need. So if I've written a book, what do I do next? I want to go to the agents first. Melanie and Jordan, what do I do when I have a manuscript?
Read it.
Read what you've written.
Read what you've written. Maybe have some close confidants or critique partners read it. But once you feel like you are ready to send it out to agents, you have to start tackling the query letter, which is basically your pitch for your book and yourself that then you will send to a number of agents. And there are an abundance of ways to find agents. I accept queries only through Query Tracker, but there are a number of ways to find people, and now I feel like I'm dominating.
It's okay, Jordan. What for those who don't know, what is Query Tracker?
So Query Tracker is a really wonderful submission website that a lot of agencies use, where basically you as the author can go in and say, I've written a middle grade fantasy novel, and you can click that and it'll say, here's all of the agents on Query Tracker who are actively taking submissions in that genre.
I believe it shows people that aren't even on there too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, see, I only know the back end of the agent side, but then you can read about the different agents, and as you decide who you want to submit to, each agent has a specific form that we kind of put together. Mine, I say, like, I need your query, I need an author bio, and then the first 10 pages of your manuscript. And then I'm able to go in and look at queries whenever I feel like it. Something we were talking about earlier is that Query Tracker does have a lot of stats for authors to look at and be like, oh, I'm 20th in her inbox. And I just want to say publicly, don't think about that, because I will go some days and say, oh, well, I only want to look at picture books today. And on my end, I can literally just click a button and only see the picture book queries. So I may be looking at something that came in after you, but I might have met with a fantastic editor who's like, I am desperate for this kind of picture book. And so then I will say, I'm going to go look in my inbox and see if I have anything like that. So there's lots of stats that I think authors can try and like read the tea leaves of when you're on Query Tracker, but I would say it's all based on timing more than anything. And don't let it like consume your brain when you're on submission. Write something else while you're on submission. But I'll let
Melanie, yeah, tell us a little bit more.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of other places to look for agents, Publishers Marketplace is also a really good place. You can see it's like an industry database with all of the deal announcements. So you can filter by your genre, your category, and see all of the agents who have deals in that space already, which might give you a good indication if they might, be a good fit for your work. In terms of what else I would recommend doing after you wrote a book, find like your people, your critique group, your writing workshop, your beta readers. I think I often recommend when you finish a manuscript, stepping away from it from weeks, potentially months, because I think having that fresh set of eyes when you come back to it is really crucial to revising it and getting it polished, and just polish it as much as you possibly can. Like if there's something that you can see that needs to be worked on, do it before you start querying your book and looking for a representation. Is there anything else? Yeah.
Aaron, even though you're an editor, I'm sure you have lots of people come to you and say, "Hey, Aaron, I'm your dentist and I'm doing a root canal on you right now, but I have this book idea. Can you take a look at it?" What's the advice you give to people, even though you're not an agent? How do you guide people to that sort of first step?
I usually say get an agent. So that is usually my number one tip. And that's hilarious. You say dentist. I've had a beekeeper ask me before about a book. So it does happen all of the time. Definitely, as the other two fabulous panelists have said, agents will represent you and also help guide you in all the things that you don't know: contract negotiation, who's an editor, who's good at that, what does this house specialize in, et cetera, et cetera. So I absolutely recommend getting an agent if you can. Um, that said, there are some houses that do take unsolicited manuscripts. So if you're able to find that, I think, there used to be a Twitter thread. I don't know what there is now because, of course, there is no Twitter. So
Well, there is, we just don't.
there's no Twitter.
Oh, that's Twitter. Oh my God.
I'm sure there's a Google Doc somewhere that exists that does say some houses that take unsolicited submissions. That said, if you're putting something into an unsolicited submission and you do get contacted by an editor, I highly, highly recommend you reach back out to the agents that you spoke to and say, this is under consideration, because that will also bump you up in an inbox.
And I think that there is definitely a desire for like, oh, well, this place takes unsolicited submissions. I can kind of like skip the agent step. But in my experience representing authors who went that route, and then I'm untangling their prior contracts, the not having an advocate to fight for your rights means that you're going to be giving things up that you might not even realize you're giving up. A lot of publishers will say, well, you don't have an agent, so I'm going to pay you this much, not give you a great royalty rate, and I'm going to also take your film rights, even though we don't have a film team. We just want to have them in case this is a huge bestseller and we can suddenly do something with it. And so when I've had to go back with authors who've done deals like that in the past, untangling those rights can be really tricky. And so there's just a lot that an agent will be looking for when it comes to negotiating that it's hard to do on your own. Even if you bring in an entertainment lawyer, publishers are not going to be as amenable to letting up some of those rights.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to make sure that the attendees and the viewers of this walk away with some really practical things, right? So knowing about Query Tracker is great. Knowing about Publishers Marketplace is fabulous. I recommend Publishers Marketplace to everyone. These are industry standard databases that you can all subscribe to and teach yourself. But I want to expand a little bit upon this notion of professionalization. There are plenty of organizations out there like the Authors Guild that you can join. If you're working in the kids and the children's publishing sector, doing picture books, middle grade or young adult, there's an organization called the SCBWI, the Society for Children's Books, Writers, and Illustrators. It's a great community. I want you all to think of yourselves as not just writers, but also as professionals. You are the CEO of your own company. And an agent, in my humble opinion, is part of your board of directors. An agent's supposed to be helping you grow your business strategy, grow your creative livelihood. So there are these other organizations. Every genre has some kind of organization around it: romance, horror, mystery, crime, cookbook people. So be a professional, get involved in these communities even before you're being published. Start following, start promoting people who are in your space, start building relationships with the local booksellers at the Grove, Barnes & Noble, or Skylight in Los Feliz. Talk to your librarians now. Begin to build relationships with people. They are your peers. They are your consiglieres. They are the people that you're going to be trafficking with for the duration of your career as an author, as an illustrator.
Yeah, I would say publishing is an extremely relationship focused industry. And even though there is kind of a carousel of editors moving houses or agents moving agencies, we all know each other. Like I've sold to Aaron at other agencies. I've known Eddie across like my whole career. And so building those relationships is so important, especially when it comes to finding those critique partners. You're all going to kind of rise at the same time and can boost each other, support each other, tell each other if something is not going well. Keep it in the group chat, but that's how you can like find out this doesn't feel right, what's happening with my agent or my publisher, and you can get that feedback. But it's relationships will last you your entire career.
So we have two agents and one editor on this panel. Let's be very, very schematic and very, very basic. What is the function? What is the duty of a book agent versus an editor? What do you actually do in the day-to-day for the authors and illustrators you represent? And then for Aaron, what are you actually doing day to day with the clients that you're taking on their titles? Why don't we start with Melanie and just work our way across the board here?
Both editors and agents are advocates for authors' books, but editors do that in-house, which I'll let Erin tackle more. And agents are really big picture, career focused. So on a day-to-day basis, we might be reading manuscripts, developing them ahead of submitting them to a publishing house, doing meetings with editors at those publishing houses where we're sort of like elevator pitching and talking up our clients and in anticipation of, submitting their work and building those relationships that Jordan mentioned. We might be sitting in on a marketing and publicity call for one of our clients to make sure that the publishing house is positioning that book effectively ahead of publication. We are negotiating contracts. We are negotiating deals. And what else? A lot of emails. A lot of emails. But yeah, there's a lot of strategy, and every day looks a little bit different, but a lot of it. And, I work with authors really long term, hopefully throughout their career. And so I'm thinking not just about this book, but the larger sort of brand that we're building for them and how to, keep building book to book.
Yeah, I would say that there's a variety of kinds of agents. I think these days, most of your agents are these strategic, long-term people who will have editorial feedback. Others who are more old school are like, I'm here to sell a book, and then I kind of like watch it happen. But it really is being an advocate. I represent a lot of queer authors, and so that means, are we going to Texas on tour or not? And making sure that if we are going to events, that there is security and that we're keeping our clients, that I'm keeping my clients safe. But also navigating like who is the right editorial partner for you. If you get into a competitive situation, I'll also sit in on all of the calls with an editor and my client when the editor's kind of selling the client on like, come to Penguin. And then having those conversations offline with my clients of, okay, well, who did you vibe with best? And let's see what kind of deal we can get. But I do feel like it's a big piece of my job is just advocacy. And I'm always thinking about my clients, even when I shouldn't, when I should like be eating. But I like to say that like no book on my list is dead. Like it may go on submission and not sell initially, but then I can meet with an editor and they say something that sparks a memory and I go, I've got a book for you. I think my record is 3 years from initial submission to sale. And that book has been on the bestseller list for a month now and had initially like been said no, got no's from everybody. So I think that, there's so much of it is timing. But
there are times when the market will meet you.
Yeah.
Your project may not be right for the market at the time, but
Yeah.
if you wait it out, the market will meet you sometimes.
And so when you're meeting with agents, kind of figuring out if they are these long-term strategy people, if they're kind of a one and done, every agent is different. You need to have lots of conversations. But then I'll let Erin talk about what it's like getting something in-house, because that's a whole different kind of advocacy.
Yes. So first I'll kind of just define what an editor is, because sometimes I'll tell people, oh, I'm a book editor. And then they'll say, oh, great. sorry, I made this typo somewhere. I'm not a copy editor. I give myself an 8 out of 10 on grammar. I like to think I'm pretty good at it, but commas are confusing sometimes. And I learn new things every day, like that dumpster has to be capitalized, but also sometimes not. It's very strange. Anyway, I am not a copy editor. I'm mostly a developmental editor. I like to say that I'm a writer's therapist because, kind of as Jordan and Melanie have said, when you're first realizing if you want that book on your list for publication, you're having a call with that author or creator and you're figuring out if you are each other's fit, and you want to see something. I always ask, here's a little bit of insider information. I always ask prospective authors, what is your goal for this book? Because some people will say, I want this to be my career. And then I note, okay, I need to sell X amount of copies. And sometimes people will say, I just really want readers who haven't read a book this year to read my book. And I write that down because I say, we're going to be really looking at, and I hate the term reluctant reader. I don't use it. I say distracted reader because I think they're distracted. I can go into that later. And then I'll write down, we're really wanting to see the distracted reader. And then so again, it's a little bit different. It's very different than agenting because I'm able to offer a financial offer to people once I like their manuscript, and sales also likes their manuscript because it's not just me. Um, but once we kind of get past that and we have a contract and there's a book publication date, it's a lot of therapy, really. It's talking to you about your characters, what they're doing, what their motivation is, going through a lot of that developmental angles. But it's also kind of therapy for the authors as well, because I'm finding out, do you need more time on this schedule? What can I do to help you? How can I also tell my sales team that this book is going to be late or early or things like that? So that's a little bit of what the editor job is, but I'm happy to answer anything else.
I love that question that you posed. What is the goal of this book, right? That's a great question, and you should all begin to ask yourself these questions. When I work with my clients, I often say to them, "Do you want to sell a book or do you want to be an author?" That's a profoundly different path. Just to sell a single title and like, "Hey, I wrote a book," versus like, I'm building a career as a storyteller. Very, very different. And again, I think it's one of those foundational questions you should ask yourself at this stage. Erin, you also mentioned you're not a copywriter. So there's sort of like, I describe it as like a sacred triangle in publishing. There's the author illustrator, there's the storyteller, there's the agent, and there's the editor. And that key relationship is paramount. But who are the other sort of people outside of that sacred triangle that are essential to the success of a title? Copy editor, you mentioned. Who are the other kind of key people in an author's career?
Absolutely. I would say the readers and their group, first and foremost. You always have to be thinking about the reader. So even if I come back to you and I say, here's the cover for your book. Sales really likes this cover for X, Y, and Z. If an author gets back to me and says, I showed my focus group this cover and they didn't like it for this, that means more to me than what sales says. So we have to go back and kind of compromise. So your readers are always the end goal. You know your readers better than the publisher does. We just need to have a conversation. Everything is a conversation. As I said, sales are the sales reps that are going into libraries, going into Barnes and Noble, going into all of the amazing independent bookstores and actually selling the book. They have a one sheet where they talk about the book, they have samples, and they get people excited about it. So that's your sales team. There's marketing and publicity teams, of course, who can help run events. Sometimes that's editors too, but it is what it is. And then, of course, there's a department called production, which handles a lot of the actual paper goods, making sure shipping is working out, making sure that everything in the book is lined up exactly like you want it to be. They also manage the copy editing team, so they'll make sure that it's according to the house style, Chicago style, whatever you're working on. There is the design team that is actually designing your book. A lot of people don't know this, but you go through a lot of different houses call it different things, routes, passes, circles. You go through many different passes of a book until you fully approve it to go to print to then be on the bookshelf. And then after that, there's people who are reviewing the book. There's awards, again, as I said, events. There is so much that goes into it. Truly, every book is a miracle.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic way of pulling back the curtain and just seeing the sort of the number of people who are touching a book at any given time. For Melanie and for Jordan, what Erin described is sort of after the book has been accepted. Who are the people on your teams who help out the author, help out the illustrator, kind of move forward? Are there other kinds of agents within your agency? Are there different kinds of agents that you work with? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So in my team, we also have dedicated subrights agents. And so they focus on selling the books in translation. If we're lucky enough to keep audio rights, they will also sell the audio rights. We also have a book to film agent who specializes in selling the books to producers and studios. And also we work with a lot of co-agents for our film deals. So it's finding the right co-agent for that client, because every film agent has a different thing that they love to focus on. And so it's not a one size fits all thing with book to film agents. And then, every agency is different, but a lot of us are really collaborative. I'm aware of what my other agents at the agency are selling. We exchange feedback a lot, not just on, the pitch, but, oh, I just had lunch with this person at Berkeley and they're really looking for this. And I know that you've got something coming up. You should make sure they're the person at Berkeley you send it to. We share notes on every single editor we meet in a magical database that I'm obsessed with, because it's searchable. But it allows collaboration and making sure that any information I get from meeting with an editor, I then share with my team so that they all know the same things. And then we can also, it helps with contracts. I know I've got a contract that is at the same house as another agent at my agency. So we're comparing notes to make sure that we're getting the best contract across the board, which means we have a really strong boilerplate, which most agencies will do with a publisher, where it's like, these are the things that should never change. Advanced level and things like that will change. But when it comes to these specific clauses, they're always going to be the same. Some agencies have a dedicated contracts person. So there are also just a lot of moving parts, but subrights are a huge piece of it. And I love our subrights team, because it's a great way for authors to continue to be making money after their book sells, but hasn't necessarily pubbed yet. Those are fun when you get to say, and we've also sold you in Germany and you're going to get money directly from Germany. So.
The only thing I'd add to that is, we have a contracts person that I work with when I'm negotiating a contract. And then we also have a licensing and merchandising agent. So that's an agent who's really focused on, like, if you wrote a picture book, making merch. We have a lot of romance authors on our list. So there's, tote bags and sweatshirts and brand partnerships with, different companies. I think one of our romance authors just did a partnership with Liquid IV. So focusing on sort of the larger brand and career that we're building for you.
So when you're looking for an agent, right, you want to kind of figure out, are you looking for an agent that's more editorial, more developmental, a bulldog of a salesperson? Do you want an agent who works at an agency that has in-house agents doing licensing and merchandising, doing film and TV deals, doing live stage deals, or is that not what you need, right? But you want to do that research at the beginning, right? You want to kind of be figuring that out. If those are your needs and your creative goals, you want an agency that can actually support those various professional goals. So in the last 15 minutes before we get to Q&A, we do want to highlight the fact that, this particular summit is here very specifically to celebrate people whose lived experiences are very different than traditional publishing. If you've ever read Publishers Weekly, and if you don't, you should. If you've ever read Publishers Weekly, the trade magazine for the publishing industry in the US, or The Bookseller, which is the trade magazine for publishing in the UK, you will see reports about just how white publishing is. And we're gonna speak very frankly here, okay? I'm half white, half Latino and Chinese, and a mixed race. And I've been in many rooms and talked with many editors and many agents who really struggle with either representing or with publishing books that are both A, outside of that individual's own lived experience, but also that may not be what the market wants. So let's sort of dig into this a little bit if we can. For the group, check out a thing called the Lee and Low Diversity Survey. It's a self-reported demographic survey of people working in the publishing industry, and it shows changes in the makeup of who works within the publishing industry. So editors and agents, for example. Yes, Lee and Low, Lee and Low, Low, diversity survey. Of course. So given sort of the gap in the sort of professional makeup of the publishing industry, how do you three advise diverse emerging writers who are navigating these dynamics? How do you help them navigate the feedback that they're getting where their work might be not universal enough, or whose work might be misinterpreted by someone who's unfamiliar with a particular community? How do you navigate this on the day-to-day with a potential client, with an actual client, with an author that you're publishing? Let's spend some time talking about that.
I am half white, I'm half Latinx, I'm bisexual, so my list is very diverse. I grew up in Orange County, my dad's from East LA. You grew up in Southern California, like you look around, that's just like the world is diverse. And so I feel like my list is reflective of that world. And so I think the question was specifically about like someone telling you your story is not universal enough. I always think that that's a load of bullshit, to be honest, because like stories, we read stories because they are reflective of the human experience. And so I think there will always be something about your particular story that is unique, or your background, or, you know, your identity that you bring to that page. And it should be, because otherwise it's boring, right? And it's bland, and it's just, you know, there's nothing that you are bringing that's special to it. And so you should have, you know, those things that you're bringing to the page. But I also think that like being human is universal. And so I always think that there is some universal like truth or humanity in every story. And so in terms of like the agenting side of things, this is something that like, if I'm pitching, you know, my author and they're from a certain background, like I'll ask them, like, do you have a preference for working with a woman of color? Do you want to work with a queer editor? And I'll be thinking about these things when I'm going to pitch someone's work and when I'm looking for editors to work with them. And it's not that, you know, the editors I submit that book will only be a part of that, you know, group. But I want to make sure that my client feels safe, and that they feel like they can work on something that might be really vulnerable and really close to them with someone who will get it. And someone who not only will get it when it comes to like the developmental editorial side of things, but who will get like who the reader is and how to pitch it to their team, you know, in sales and marketing and acquisitions meetings, and will then know how to market that book to the readers that will love it, and understand it. So I think a lot of it's, yeah, that relationship building, knowing who the reader is. And then in terms of like how I work with clients, I just try to be really, when I'm working with someone whose identity I don't share, I'm often thinking about just being open-minded and asking them lots of questions, and giving them that safe space that we can work together. And because, you know, I don't know their story, I haven't lived it, but I want them to have that sort of safe space to be creative and develop their best work. So,
Love that.
Yeah, we talk a lot about like windows and mirrors as like ways to introduce concepts or experiences that maybe your like average white kid reader hasn't had. So you're showing a window into somebody else's life, but you're also mirroring that person, the like person from that community's experience, so that they're finally seeing themselves in a book that they're reading at school. I definitely have very personal conversations with my clients before I put something on submission, down to like what their bio says. Do we want to acknowledge that you're queer, or if you're trans, are we acknowledging that? Are we highlighting certain things, but so that no one is feeling outed when they don't want to be? Because that is also something that happens a lot, where because the industry is trying so hard to focus on authentic stories, the question can come up, well, wait, this is about two gay guys and you're a lady. How can you write that? And it's like, well, I'm actually trans and I didn't want to talk about that, but thank you. And so having those conversations is important. And then I have a lot of my clients who are writing very personal stories actually include a personal note that I put with the submission that says, like, this is why I'm writing this story and why I'm the person to tell this story. And then that often becomes part of the marketing materials eventually. I had a book that was very much about a trans kid, and the client had very specific ways that he wanted the main character described. And so we wrote it out and I sent it to the editor, and she made sure it was sent to every single marketing, publicity person, sales rep, so that the book was positioned in a way that was comfortable for the author. And so it is just a lot of conversations around how do you see this book in the world? Going back to Erin's, like, what is the goal for this book? It's also, how do you want the world to see this book? And what do you want it to mean to your readers? But then my relationship with every single client is different. I also represent a lot of neurodivergent clients, and that means that I have to work with every single person differently. Some people have auditory processing disorders, and so we record everything or make sure we have a transcript of every single meeting. Some people don't want to ever be on a video call, or some people only want to be on video calls. And so I have to adapt the way that I work with every single person. And even when it comes to getting submission feedback, some people want every single submission pass word for word, and others are like, do not tell me anything. I don't want to know unless I'm getting an offer. And so those are things that I have to take into account with each client as well. But when it comes to getting those passes that are very clearly the bullshit of just like, well, this is just not a universal story, I ultimately chalk that up as like, you're just not the right editor for this. And then when you find that editor, it does kind of feel like a mind meld. And watching a client and an editor have that moment of like, we are on the same page is really magical. So, there's lots of, it can feel discouraging, but there are lots of people trying very hard in this current climate to continue to buy books that tell diverse stories and show diverse experiences. Across the board, people aren't getting as much money because publishing has gotten even more conservative with how much they're willing to spend these days. But I am still selling.
Awesome.
And so there are people who want these books.
Speaking of buyers.
Yes. So I'm so glad, Jordan, that you said self-ID is up to you. That's actually something I wrote down before you started speaking. No matter who you are, what you choose to share is totally up to you. But something else I wrote down is know your niche. It's actually, and maybe this is where I disagree with some other editors, but I don't think any book is universal. And I don't think universal books even sell the best, to be quite honest, because you're competing with everything else that is also universal. So know your niche. What is that niche? Is that niche people who share your background, who have, tangential relationships to your background? Is your niche people who are looking for multi-generational stories? Is your niche people who are looking for X, Y, and Z? Know what that is and really have a plan for exactly who your reader is. And that's, to me, I think, the most important thing. Because again, not every story is ever going to apply to every single person. That would be wild if it did.
Yeah.
But it will apply because the human experience is universal. And as long as you know your niche, it will find that.
Can I piggyback on that real quick?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give a specific example. I have a client named Victoria Zeller, and her debut YA was about a trans girl football player on her football team. And Victoria is a trans sports writer. And when I signed her, I said, I promise you we're going to get passes that say sports books don't sell, because a lot of people in publishing are women who don't necessarily watch football. I love football, but I was like, that might actually be a bigger hurdle than the trans aspect. The fact that it's a football book.
That's
Um,
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I said, you have a platform as a sports writer. So we're going to highlight that. And when the book was announced, it was X was still a thing people were using. And it was so fascinating to watch like book Twitter and football Twitter like combine and have this like excitement around a book. And it ended up hitting the bestseller list and having a bunch of pre-orders primarily from like the sports fan side of things because Victoria had that background and had a following in sports. And it was something I had to like push with editors. I was like, I get that you think football isn't a thing for you, but Victoria has the people who will come and read what she's doing. And so that really is like knowing your niche and then working with your like agent partner to say, we're going to lean into this. And that's how, you know, she hit the list first week because she had a huge amount of like sports people come pick up her book.
Great. Before we go to Q&A, we're going to do a speed round, okay? Super fast, really brief. How many submissions do you get a month?
700 to 900.
Oh, whoa, that's way more than me. I probably get 300.
There is, fun fact, no way to track when you are an editor because you just get emails and sometimes the emails get lost. So I don't know. I can tell you that every week we probably discuss about 50 amongst our editorial group.
In a sentence, what's one piece of advice you give to someone when you decline representing them or when you decline taking on their book?
Keep going.
Read in the market you're trying to publish into.
Sorry, slightly long answer. I try to I try to make it a little clear that it's not right for me or my house, but that doesn't mean that it's not right for somebody else's house or some other editor because sometimes it's a little bit of a people want feedback, but then also I don't want to give too much feedback because sometimes I'll get a submission that looks like everybody took in all the feedback from all the previous editors and it doesn't look like what I think the author originally wanted. So if requested, I will give that, but generally I say, you know you better, and I just don't connect, and that's okay.
And we love that. I would much rather get that than wait 8 months for
Yeah.
a very detailed rejection.
The only thing better than an offer is a fast no.
Yes, I love a fast no.
Okay, last thing. What are you looking for as an agent, as an editor? What genres, formats, very specific themes are you looking for right now?
Is this one word too?
I mean, as brief as possible. I want to give Q&A.
The majority of what I work on is speculative fiction. So I love fantasy, horror, sci-fi, thrillers, mystery. Again, it's just speculative fiction. And about half my list is adult fiction. About half my list is kid lit. So that's middle grade and young adult.
Um, I said this earlier to them. I am like desperate to represent an astronaut. If you are an astronaut, if you know an astronaut, that is like my super specific request for 2025. I'm obsessed with space. I want more space nonfiction for kids. And I will fight tooth and nail to make publishers care about space again. But I am actually really looking for nonfiction in the middle grade and YA space at the moment, but would love an astronaut. So if you know one.
So whenever my publisher is asked this question, and she's fantastic, her name is Kirsty Melville, she says, good books. And unfortunately, the answer is good books. Bring me a niche. It's okay if I don't know about that niche, like football, we can use it as an example. And tell me why, because then I can look and I can see, wow, there are no similar titles that are about this. This is interesting and cool. Something I'm really interested in my personal life is Pokemon cards. You can't do a Pokemon card book unless you get the license with Pokemon. But if you know that market so well and you vend every weekend with Pokemon cards, maybe you're going to be doing a contract negotiation book for kids. And I want to know about things like that. So bring me your niche and your good books.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to move to audience Q&A here. We have a lot of questions. So I'm going to just tell you, we can't get to all of them. So I'm going to try and edit this and make it tight in the last 10 minutes we have together. Do you need a completed manuscript before you approach an agent?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Why no quickly?
For graphic novels, you're not going to have it complete. I can have an outline.
Okay, that's true.
Graphic novel specifically. Fair. Got it.
But you need the outline.
Yes.
Perfect. Given how many submissions y'all are receiving, do you use any kind of AI or algorithm to vet the incoming submissions?
No.
No.
Are you reading everything you're submitted?
Yes.
Yes. Well,
Well, not like we humans are reading it, but we
Yes.
don't always read the entirety of the sample chapters if
Yeah.
we know the answer sooner than that. That's what I
Yes.
will say quickly.
that is what I would say.
I read every query and I can tell you immediately if I should continue reading or not. Sometimes I get things that are just clearly not for me.
Yeah, those are very easy.
Is there a market for female African American led stories?
Yes.
Great. Can't read the handwriting. Let's see. Sarah writes, I've noticed that many mainstream best-selling books with queer characters, especially in romance, aren't marketed as queer. The queerness only becomes clear as the book is read. What are your thoughts on pitching a book as queer versus focusing on the story and letting the queerness be secondary?
I think that's kind of what Jordan was saying, and you guys actually both said about self-IDing, but I think it's also like regardless of who the characters are, the hook is what sells, like is like what gets readers to open it. So that's probably why a lot of the marketing copy doesn't focus on that.
Yeah, I've only sold one straight YA novel in my career. So editors tend to expect a level of queerness if they're getting a submission from me. But I usually put in big letters in the subject line, like queer. So yeah, I don't hide it.
You do that. You know, now that you say that, you absolutely do, and I like it. I will say it's often determined sometimes if it's not specifically up to an author is okay with either direction. It's up to sales and where sales thinks that the book is going to gain more traction. They have their algorithm. I don't know it. I wish I did.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how tight is the publishing market right now in terms of the number of books being acquired?
Publishing always publishes a lot of books, too many probably. So I don't know that that's any worse right now. Yeah, do you guys have
It has been a hard year to sell,
Yeah.
though.
It has.
I just did a conference 2 weeks ago that was only agents and editors, and everybody was like, all the agents were like, "This has been a rough year for me. Has it been one for you?" And everyone was like, "Yes." But I think that I also have editors who are getting approved in their acquisition meetings to make offers that they're too embarrassed to give me because they're so low because the publishers are being so conservative. So it's a tight market, but stuff is still getting through. It's just, it ebbs and flows.
Would you recommend hiring an independent editor to review a manuscript before going to agents?
No, because most people can't afford it, quite frankly. Freelance editors are very pricey. And I also think that those skills, like to revise a book, are things that an author needs to develop, because when you sell a book, you're going to be doing, often 2 or 3 rounds of developmental edits. You're going to have a proofreader, you're going to do line edits, you're going to do copy edits. So these are all like the skills of taking feedback in and incorporating it into your manuscript are absolutely things that you're going to need to practice and develop. That said, I think like some people might have the money to kind of treat the freelance editorial process as sort of like their own personal MFA. And if you are one of those people, why not? But I think that's kind of probably how you should treat it, is like, I'm going to pay this person to work with me and I'm going to become a better writer for it because I'm going to treat it like a little MFA program that I'm doing. But besides that, I generally think it's not worth it.
And it's why you build those relationships and you go to your SCBWI conferences and you meet people and you build your group of like critique partners who they become your editors because you're reading each other's work probably for free, but because you're working with each other, and then those are the people who can then say to you, like, you need to send this out now, it's ready. SCBWI, it's the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. It's a great way to find critique partners if you're in the kidlit space.
And if you're in comics, I would recommend Kids Comics Unite.
Yes.
There is a pitch fest actually every fall as well for that, which is great. Although last year it was winter. In terms of hiring an editor, we haven't really touched this, but if you are choosing to go the self-publishing route, I would recommend hiring an editor. Otherwise, your editor comes with the book deal. So why would you pay money for that when it is a service required by the publisher? Any publisher who says you should pay them to publish the book is a vanity publisher, and I do not recommend it.
Great advice. A lot of scams out there, a lot of predatory practitioners out there, so please be careful. Speaking of self-publishing, for the agent and then for the editor, do you ever sign self-published authors in the hopes of selling their self-published book into traditional publishing?
I've offered representation to self-published authors who were getting a lot of sales on, Amazon, and were then getting traditional publishing interest or audio interest, things like that. So my agency, Brute Literary, also represents a lot of romance in particular authors who might have sort of something that's more appropriate for self-publishing, and we'll do foreign deals for them, foreign translation deals, we'll do audio deals for them. And then they'll also typically have like a traditional publishing kind of line of business that's more appropriate for that market. So yeah, I think open to it depending on the situation.
Yeah, we have an agent at Jabberwocky who represents a number of indie authors and started selling the subrights, and then subsequent deals then did with traditional publishers. In the kidlit space, self-publishing is so tricky that it's not something I do much of, but it is something that if you're killing it in that indie adult space and Bloom is calling you with a 6-figure offer, get yourself an agent before you take that deal.
Yep. I have acquired self-published books before. I will be very frank, the numbers on the sales of the self-publishing does matter. One book is actually a New York Times bestseller. It's called Matt Sprouts and the Curse of the 10 Broken Toes by Matt Eicheldinger, who is a fabulous teacher, speaker, etc. He had originally self-published his first book. He and I worked together. We did a complete developmental edit, so it was kind of a new edition of his book when it came out, and it was an immediate bestseller. And what was really helpful was when our sales reps went into accounts, they said, he sold 3,000 copies by himself. What do you think we can do with this whole team? And so that really showed a lot of attention. But it is something I do want to be really careful of before steering people there, because if it works, it's amazing. And if it doesn't, maybe work on another manuscript.
And it costs more than just the developmental price. Like, a lot of times if you're seeing a big bestseller on the indie side, they're paying for promotion on Amazon, or they're spending more money than just the process of editing and publishing the book to get people aware of it.
We've all mentioned sort of the economics, right? There's a lot of investment that people have to make into building their career. We got a question. What advice do you have for low income disabled writers, especially disabled people who write at a slower pace due to a disability? So there's a sort of 2 prongs to that question, the income question and the disability question. I'd like to sort of pick apart the 2 of them because there's different aspects to that.
I feel like I could be reading into it, but I feel like there's maybe a level. I have some clients who are really slow, like writers and drafters. And I think sometimes there's a level of like watching what everyone else is doing and kind of kicking yourself for like, oh, I should be faster. I just like, look, this person's published 2 books and I'm still working on this drafts. And so I think I would say something my boss Holly Root always says, which keep your eyes on your own paper. Because I think a lot of that is like self-talk. I love a slow drafter. Agents have lots of clients. I don't mind if you're taking your time, I think the book's going to be just as beautiful as if it takes, 2-3 years to draft. Maybe even better, honestly, because you dug into it more. So I would say, like, cut yourself some slack. It's okay. Everyone moves at their own pace. And then in terms of like the low income piece of it that might have to do more with like what we're talking about with like the money that you put into it. Traditional publishing, publishers paying you. So the good thing about these days is like so many people are doing promotion on social media, which is like free to start an account. And if you want to post there, you can. It's just like, do you want to be in those spaces? Like, do you have, something to share? So in that sense, I think there are a lot of self-promotion opportunities that cost nothing, and you don't need to pay a publicist. You don't need to pay someone to market your book. That's something that the traditional publisher who you end up selling a book to should in
do.
theory be doing.
I did get a heads up that we have to end the panel, unfortunately, so I hate to cut us off.
Can I say one last thing on the low income thing?
Of course, Jordan, of course.
Libraries. I work remotely. My agency's in New York. I'm in Orange County. I spend 4 days a week at my local Orange County Public Library using their Wi-Fi, using their printers. And so if you're I'm sorry. But if you are low income and even just having an internet connection is a difficulty for you, or a computer, go to your library. They have Wi-Fi, they have computers, they have printers, and it is a way for you to be able to access what you need. You can do your query tracker from the computer at the library. You can submit from libraries. Sorry, I'm a big library here. I wanted to end on that.
Thank you to the LA County Library. Thank you to the Writing Summit organizers. Thank you all for your fabulous questions. We are going to be doing, I believe, a series of one-on-ones that have already been pre-organized, but feel free and approach at least me. I can't speak for the others, but we are here because we care. We want to share information. We want to be a resource to you. Please don't pitch us while we're at the urinal on the stall. It does happen. Please don't do it. But have a fabulous day. Learn a lot, meet, network, and enjoy.